It's been a wild 24 hours with Mark Carney admitting he might have said the wrong thing when it comes to dealing with Donald Trump. We've got some pipeline speculation, a major new shipping terminal being built in Vancouver, Washington by a Canadian company, which is interesting to see. As well, we might have some good news, maybe Canada winning back some auto sector jobs. And President Trump is crushing it when it came to his speech today, as well as the peace negotiations, which we have to get into some interesting coverage around that. For some reason, the Liberals and the Democrats decided to become the pro-war party. Weird to see. An interesting clip from some old school Canadians. There's a lot to talk about in today's video, so let's get into it. So for those who don't know, Mark Carney said, who cares when it comes to dealing with Donald Trump? He said it's just details on when he's going to meet with them next, basically saying it doesn't even matter. The mainstream media pushed back a little bit. Obviously, the conservatives and the opposition ran with it a ton, so he was forced to admit maybe it was a poor choice of words.
Mr. Speaker, on the night of the election, when I had the great honor from my constituents of being elected as a deputy of this House, unlike some others in the chamber today.
That's him taking a shot at Pierre because Pierre did not win on election night, for those who don't know.
I made a promise to Canadians. When I make a mistake, I'll admit it. That was a poor choice of words about a serious issue. And the serious issue is what progress are we making structurally? Best deal in the world, strongest budget in the world, and the most new trade deals in the world.
The most new trade deals in the world is so funny. Like, I love that there's actually no accountability in the House. They're just allowed to say whatever they want. Seriously, there's no accountability. You just can't get in trouble. So they can just make up whatever, make up facts. But I do love that even people on the left are starting to get annoyed with the way that Carney deals with the press, because for some reason, he is particularly mean and rude to female reporters for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe he's just used to the old boys in the boardroom. But speaking of the old boys in the boardroom, David Eby, the premier or the governor of British Columbia, has been having a rough 24 hours because as we are seeing more talk of this pipeline start to heat up, which we'll get into some of the details. Sounds like good news overall. I'm a little suspicious. He is getting absolutely crushed from all sides right now. Let's get into it.
An agreement between Alberta and Ottawa is expected this week for a memorandum of understanding on a new pipeline to BC's coast, involving an exemption to the province's tanker ban.
Big picture, what we're looking to do and what we are doing is a series of major investments, nation-building projects that make our country stronger.
Premier Eby talked Monday morning with Prime Minister Carney, expressing his strong opposition to the plan, telling reporters the deal isn't yet finalized.
So it's very important for us to pay attention. How many times this guy has expressed his extreme opposition to these projects, including one of them that we're going to get into that moved down to the United States because of his extreme opposition.
And reiterating his frustrations that even Saskatchewan was included in talks about the pipeline, but not BC.
It's not something that would happen to Quebec. This is not something that would happen to other provinces in the Federation. I don't know why the thought was that it would be okay for it to happen to British Columbia.
Eby acknowledged
because you shut down everything.
An official MOU was likely days away, but disputed that means an actual pipeline is inevitable, with no private sector proponent yet.
It is going to be taxpayer funded, that British Columbia get access to a $50 billion federally funded project as well.
I'm thrilled to see that this is going forward. I think it's part of a nation-building project that helps to unify this country.
Eby told the Prime Minister his biggest demand, that coastal First Nations be at the table.
This is why I haven't got too excited about the pipeline announcement yet. Would it be great for Canada? Absolutely. Some of the numbers that they're talking about for these pipelines that are being theorized, it would be great. So this project could be a massive win. However, Mark Carney today said, you know, a memorandum of understanding doesn't actually mean we're giving approval. It just means we're going to talk about it. So he's still saying it's just talk. In my personal opinion, until we see actual dates, until we see pen to paper, until we see real serious progress, I'm not going to give them any credit.
First Nations consent and support is required for this conversation.
Meanwhile, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith expressed confidence on her radio talk show a deal is coming.
We've been going back and forth almost daily for probably the better part of the last 2 weeks.
Feeling left out of consultations, EB's frustrations amplified by news a huge Saskatchewan potash company plans to ship its products out of Washington state, not BC's ports.
We'll get into that story shortly because the details around it, they almost say, David Eby sucks, so we're just going to build out of the States.
That really was just the cherry on top.
Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe firing back.
I'm really disappointed that, an NDP premier would, start, thinking that this conversation is either or. It's either his projects or someone else's, and always advocating that it should be his.
Keep in mind, David Eby's the real Team Canada guy. These are our 3 Western provinces that are crucial for a lot of Canada's resource production. And David Eby, one single guy, is becoming the thorn in everyone's side. But just to show how good David Eby is at making financial decisions and how he puts priority on the right projects, we do have this story here. BC is hemorrhaging money. They can't seem to win any international investment. And he said, let's get this project done.
The province is being slammed over its spending on a trio of soccer balls made of wood leather. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation says they found out through Freedom of Information requests the province spent $55,000 for the production of the 3 balls. They were created by a team at UBC whose leather project overall cost the province an additional $133,000.
Additional $133,000 on top of the $55,000. So that's creeping up on $200,000. So with everything going on, I'm glad British Columbia has all of their priorities straight, and that's how we ended up with this story here. Canadian potash company Nutrien to build a terminal in the US and not BC. And it's so funny. Oh, BC Premier David Eby says a recent decision by the company doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense? You raise opposition to every single project that gets announced. Eby said on Monday he questions this decision as it would put Canadian products at the mercy of the US administration. It puts Saskatchewan's resources in a precarious place and denies BC a port expansion, Eby said. You're the liability. You are the one putting all of the production into precarious situations. These companies walked away from millions in investments they'd already made looking into and trying to develop a terminal in BC and said, it's worth us losing all of that money to not have to deal with you. We're just going to work with the US. So yeah, Eby, I think maybe leave America out of this one because it's basically entirely your fault. But we do have a small piece of good news with a caveat, of course, when it comes to the Stellantis negotiations and on them moving down to the States. Seems like we might have just won back 1,400 jobs. Let's get into it. But again, bit of details are important here.
Is James Stewart, president of Unifor Local 444, which represents workers at the Stellantis plant in Windsor. James, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Appreciate it.
You know what? It certainly is some good news. The Canadian auto industry has been so hard hit, especially amongst the tariffs. We know what happened in Brampton. I want to get to that in a second. But first of all, from your perspective, just take me through how significant this move is to have Stellantis add this shift in the new year.
It really is significant. We bargained this in 2023.
What? You bargained this in 2023? Which means they are just following through on their contractual obligation to set up this shift before they're planning on leaving Canada. So I like the idea that they are contractually obligated to create this shift to hire these new people. But I want to know for how long, because we've seen just how quickly they can, lay off shifts and shut these down.
And that's important for people to recognize. We went through a whole process through all the troubles we've been facing around tariffs and trade, including what happened at the Brampton Assembly Plant, and made sure that the commitment was lived up to. It is right now one of the only good news stories we're hearing in the auto industry in Canada today. The third shift at the Windsor Assembly Plant. We build strong products at the plant. We're the only plant that builds them. and our quality really is second to none.
I don't want to be pessimistic on this one because it's one of the few pieces of good news we got recently. And he does kind of say later on, you know, we're not sure what's going to happen long term. We hope that they're going to stay. So you know that the confidence isn't there that they're actually going to be staying. But another piece of good news for Saskatchewan, possibly horrible news for the world, Canada to announce uranium export deal with India in further sign of warming relations. We're getting nukes, sir. And Canada and India are putting the finishing touches on a deal to supply New Delhi with uranium, and another signal of warming relations after a diplomatic rupture. The export deal would be worth about 2.8 billion USD. Couple details worth noting around this story. Canada and India already had a uranium deal that was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. From what I understand, they weren't totally utilized, so I don't know if this is actually going to manifest into that total amount. That being said, we are seeing some people putting out some concerns that we are going to give India, a BRICS nation, access to consumer uranium. We won't have as much oversight over who they could be selling it to. Remember, they are part of BRICS, which is essentially trying to crush Western trade dominance. And I know the Americans are not happy because who knows what they're going to be doing with all of that uranium. Speaking of Americans, Trump had a speech today that has so many clips. We probably could have done a whole video just on this speech because it was very funny. But this is an important clip because one, you make some funny jokes. And two, we see a shared problem between Canada and the US when it comes to the Liberals and the Democrats and how for some reason they're pro-crime. Let's get into it.
We could do that in Chicago, by the way, if they would let us. If the mayor was a low IQ person, but he should understand this. This is a very serious thing. You saw all the crime that took place last night, the night before. The woman with the burning, they burned the woman. To be talking about that now, they burned this beautiful woman riding in a train. A man was arrested 72 times. 72 times, think of that. And they'll let him out again. The liberal judges will let him out again. But we're ready to go. You know, we've been...
And that was part of the thing that's shared between Canada and the US, and it's obviously a problem. Here we call them liberals, there you call them Democrats, but these judges are becoming a real problem. The judges themselves are the liability. If this person has been let out onto the street over 70 times, it's the same thing in Canada. The repeat offenders are the problem. We continue to let them off with all this soft on crime, and the only people who suffer are the innocent people like that poor girl on the train.
Moving toward Chicago, we have a governor that thinks it's wonderful that only like 7 people were killed this week. But we are moving toward doing, and we're going to, if crime gets, it's horrible what's happening in Chicago. We could make Chicago a safe city in a period of 4 weeks. In a period of 8 weeks, 9 weeks, 10 weeks, it would be totally safe. And the people of Chicago want us to go there. And if you look at the crime that's taken place in Chicago in the last 2 weeks, just take a look. It's on the front page of every newspaper. It's out of control. The mayor is incompetent, and the governor is a big fat slob. He ought to invite us.
That is... okay, I'm sorry, I gotta collect myself. I forgot that it was there. And his pause, his timing is so perfect. And when we get to the end of the clip with what he says, of course, the liberals online were spiraling. Oh, he's such a hypocrite. He just does such a great job at trolling. But the idea that he painted there is something that I've mentioned on the channel, is something in a way that I think we need to reframe our thinking. Like he said, they were bragging that there was only 7 incidents over the weekend. So what they want is they want you to accept that there is an acceptable amount of collateral damage, when in my mind, there's not. And when Operation Caribom and all these things happen, and we can see the damage that's done to local populations, innocent people, for us to be soft on crime is to accept collateral damage as just being part of it and saying, well, if we're too mean, it's not fair to them. We got to protect their rights. Got to make sure that we're not too mean to those people. So you guys are just going to have to accept some level of sacrifice because it would be too mean.
Say, please make Chicago safe. We're going to lose a great city if we don't do it quickly. Make Chicago. We'll do the same thing as we did in D.C., the same thing as we did everywhere we've gone. It's become almost instantly safe. And I want to do it in Chicago. So Governor Pritzker, if you're listening, let's get your act together. Invite us in. We're going to make your place so safe. You're not going to have these crimes that are making the newspapers and the front page of every newspaper and television story, news story. We'll make Chicago a safe place very quickly.
Chicago's a great, desirable city for a lot of people, a lot of businesses. So if they could eliminate the massive crime that they have there, it would have such positive results for the city.
I looked at the various cases, granting mercy, discovering that the terrible trauma that everyone's going through. And I had a little bit of a Pritzker joke. I was going to talk about Pritzker in size, but when I talk about Pritzker, I get angry because he's not letting us do the job. So I'm not going to tell my Pritzker joke. They have a very cute little joke, you know. Some speechwriter wrote some joke about his weight. But I would never want to talk about his weight. I don't talk about people being fat. I refuse to talk about the fact that he's a fat slob. I don't mention it.
That's so good. That is literally, I know, I've already seen people spiraling about that clip because he literally just called him, in this exact clip, he literally just called him a big fat slob. So he's obviously trolling. He's obviously trying to get them heated and riled up. But it's so funny on the other side. It's just comedic genius. The timing is perfect and it's hard to not respect it. Speaking of Trump crushing it, though, we do have this little update here. Most likely by now you guys have heard that Ukraine and Russia are getting really close to a peace deal. This is the first time that talks have gotten this far along because Ukraine this time has said they are on board for a lot of what is being negotiated. So I'm not going to get into the details of the deal specifically. What I want to cover is the media coverage in Canada and how the Democrats are taking this deal. And for some reason, the Liberals and the Democrats are pro-war all of a sudden. Ukraine ready to advance US-backed deal to end war. Zelensky says, so we're seeing coming out of Ukraine, they are ready. They want this deal to be done. But for some reason, when the Canadian media covers it, they say it needs to be improved. The world leaders react to the US-backed Ukraine-Russia peace plan. So already just the framing from that, and we know most people just read the headlines and move on. People are going to think, oh yeah, another bad peace deal. Of course, Trump's in there messing it up. He's trying to work for Putin, you know, as they say. Another example of the bad coverage on the Canadian side, US peace plan dead on arrival, says former Ukraine PM. In this video, the Ukrainian PM says it was dead on arrival. We changed everything. It looks great. We feel like Trump's actually working to get a peace deal done, and we feel like it's a priority to him. But he said that about the first draft, which nobody agreed to, and nobody expects that the first draft is going to get agreed to. But of course, CBC covers it as US peace plan dead on arrival. But then again, another example from the Canadian National News, and it's worth paying attention to for this, because this is the small micro manipulations that they do. Russian strikes on Kiev, unalive 7 people as peace talks continue. Okay, well, how did other national news agencies cover that? They covered it as Russia and Ukraine trade strikes as US and Moscow hold talks. So we have 2 different coverages from 2 different national news stations. And don't get me wrong, BBC isn't exactly known for being unbiased. Trump's suing them right now. And they still are doing a better job at showing both sides. And just to show you how this is happening on the American end with the Democrats too, almost all of the coverage that I saw when they were interviewing Democrats was Democrats warn about efforts to end war in Ukraine. Russia only responds to pressure. Hey, Democrats, Ukraine said they want peace. Maybe get out of the way and stop trying to pressure them. Like, I love that it's just an old lady. She has no skin in the game, nothing to lose. There's nothing at risk for her. But of course, she wants them to be careful and keep fighting. But we do have stories like this that we need to cover because we do have skin in the game. Another crossover story between Canada and the US. Obviously, there was a lot of news coming out of the US about all of the Somalis doing all the scamming, supporting some of those political enthusiast groups back home. Seems like the problem is on both sides of the borders. We got this awful headline today. Somali woman who was in a polygamous marriage and lied to get into Canada wins another chance to stay. This article is crazy. The entire article is just how they've been trying to scam the system in Canada for well over a decade, like we're seeing in the US. And the crazy thing is, this individual case has cost taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars on a single case as they continue to appeal and fight and push back on every single thing. When she came through with fraudulent documents, she came through on a lie. That's illegal. We have almost 600,000 people people waiting in line, with most of those cases being the same thing. If a single case can fight for a decade, cost taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars, what do we think the cost will be to fight 600,000 cases? They need to all be rejected and we need to move on. And it won't happen until we can get politicians like this again. Where's this guy now? Get him back in the House.
I hear the word racist from that side. Do you have the fortitude or the gonads to stand up and come across here and say that to me, you son of a bitch? Come on.
Daryl.
Order. Order.
You want me to get
Yes.
A real heritage moment for Canada there. Great to see. But speaking of media manipulation, speaking of bad coverage and how they choose to try and make their narratives what they want them to be, there was a peaceful protest that had to do with Operation Cuddy Bomb and immigration. But of course, the media could not allow a peaceful protest, so they had to paint it in a completely fake way and basically lie the entire time.
This is dashcam footage from viewer Dave, who doesn't want his last name used. Taken Sunday around noon, it appears to show a group of about 30 people dressed in...
So there's the protest there. There's just some guys on a bridge. They have the old Canadian flag. It's called the Dominion flag there. And they have a banner that says Remigration Now. They are standing peacefully. They're just in a line. This was the entire protest, okay?
In dark uniforms and masks, standing in formation on the Wortley Road overpass. The group is allegedly stormtroopers, named after the paramilitary wing of the historical party in Germany.
So right away, comparing him to troops of the mustache guy? Yeah, sure.
They're holding a banner up that reads, Remigration Now. The term refers to a far-right concept of ethnic cleansing via the mass deportation of non-white immigrants and their descendants.
Once again, misrepresentation of the facts. It's not about that at all. What it's about is saying, hey, legal migration was abused. It was not used properly. And as we just showed, there's people in Canada who are here illegally through legal means. And those people do not have the right to PR in Canada, and if people did get their citizenship through illegal means, that would also be covered legally to remove their citizenship if it was done through fraud.
Viewer Dave says it has no place in London.
It was a military display of force. People have the right to protest, even those people. They can have a conversation, but presenting themselves in uniforms with masks, in black attire, with a clear message that says all people who aren't white should get out of Canada on a banner in a public space, I would say is more intimidation than conversation.
We just watched that guy lie in real time and be disproved by this exact clip. They said in the clip, it said Remigration Now. It didn't say anything to do with what he said. For some reason, they just let that guy lie. There was no military demonstration. It was a flag. It was a banner. He lied about what it said on the banner, which they even said in their own story. And they put some random guy's comments out there for the average person to somehow watch and then pearl clutch over. As we can see, it's been a wild 24 hours, obviously, with some projects moving down to the US because BC is in the way of everything. Maybe a new pipeline. There's lots of stuff going on. As usual, we need to keep our eyes out for all of the media manipulation that is constantly happening. We know that the mainstream media continues to prove themselves to be the enemy of the people, but if you made it this far in the video, you absolutely rock. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We're trying to get these videos out in front of more people. We are trying to grow the channel. If you want to support the channel, you can do it through the link down below. You can also do it directly through YouTube. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.